welcome to episode 84 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So, it's a new book.
Yay!
Jazz hands.
Yeah.
So we're pretty excited. We are doing Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So I guess normally when we do a new book, we generally talk about how we got into it.
Yes.
So this one's kind of funny because it really just came out of nowhere. I had never read anything else by her.
No, I have not either.
Or even heard of anything else.
No, neither have I. And it, so I guess I'll mention first that I literally got into this book because I kept seeing it on TikTok everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all over Book Talk. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was talking about the lead, character. And it was all over. I'm in a whole bunch of, reading Facebook groups, and, it was all over that. I went into the bookstore one day over the summer, and I said, do you guys have any copies of Fourth Wing? I figure I'd heard that if you're a fan of, SJM and sort of the romantasy sort of genre, that this was going to be a good book for you. Mm-hmm. So I went in and asked about it, and the bookstore was like, we cannot keep that in stock. It's gone. And they were like, we're getting more on Thursday, so, come back. So I immediately went on the Libby app and saw that there were 90 people waiting for it through Libby. It was insane. And I was like, I guess this book is bigger than I thought it was. Yeah. And lucky, I ended up going online to actually order the new From Blood and Ash book. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, well, since I'm ordering this one, I might as well order Fourth Wing too. So I did. And then it came in the mail, and it sat on my shelf for a week or so. And then I was like, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. So I did it. It did take me a while, but not to get through, but to finally say, because you know how there's an anticipation, right? Everyone's saying how amazing the book is. So you obviously want it to be amazing, and how disappointing is it going to be if it's not amazing? Yeah. So I finally stopped procrastinating and picked it up, and I read it, and it was great. Yeah. It was so good. Mm-hmm. So then I immediately told you had to read it.
Yeah. And I too had seen it everywhere, and so many people had talked about it on Instagram and Facebook groups and stuff, and I heard about it on some book podcasts, and so I was like, fine. So I ordered it, and I pre-ordered the second one because I'm ridiculous, but our, not local, but our Canadian bookstore, if you pre-order books, you get 500 bonus points. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I was like, screw it. I'll just order the next one. I've heard so many good things. I'm sure I'll love it, whatever. And then same, I got it. And I think I took this on a trip with me, didn't read it. And then I took it on a second trip with me and finally read it on the second trip. So it sat around for, I'd say, a while before I actually read it. And I think for me, it's because it's a hardcover. I just hate reading hardcovers. I hate it. I don't like it.
Yeah. I guess it depends on your position while reading. If you're a lie-downing reader, then it gets all over you. It's so hard to keep it up because it's so heavy.
It's going to fall on your face. Yeah. Yeah. Mostly I was on my belly reading it. Or then we went to a few breweries, and Jeff was picking out his fantasy football, and I was reading the book. So it was perfect.
It's what a great date night, honey.
Yeah.
Let's not interact at all.
Exactly. He's talking to me, and I'm like, no. I'm reading this book.
It's
but yeah, I obviously ended up reading it after you, and then I was texting you every 2 pages about it. Even when I didn't have service, I was messaging you so that you would get them all when I finally got service.
Yeah, and I loved it. It was amazing. Yeah.
I think it's an interesting book to read, especially if you have read ACOTAR, because, like, I've also seen some hate about it, and I think mostly it's because people hyped it up so much that, like, obviously people, if you go in with too high expectations, you're not going to love it. So, like, I get it. And, like, there's only so much groundbreaking stuff that you can do in romantic fantasy. And whatever. I don't care. I loved it.
Yeah. But, like, that's the thing. I think it's entertaining. It does what it says on the tin, right? Like, it entertains you, turns you on a little bit in certain parts. You care about the main characters, and there's not a crazy ending, but, like, there's an ending that makes you excited for the second book.
Yes.
So, like,
for sure.
I don't know what else people want.
Yeah, it's very much, I don't know, it's what I want in a book, for sure.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting. It makes me wonder if I had read ACOTAR at this point in my life, how I would have felt about the characters in that book. And if I had read this book earlier in my life, how I would have felt about one of the characters that I immediately was like, he's trash. I hate him.
No.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if I would have had a different...
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just interesting.
It's like your favorite word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I wonder how I would have felt about this book if it came out, like, 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I feel like I would still really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think you'd have the same...
No.
I think it would be... not to spoil anything, really.
More love triangle-y than it is.
You would feel the love triangle, whereas I'm reading it and I'm like, this is not a love triangle.
But it's not, though.
I know.
It's not a love triangle. But yes, like, maybe when I was younger, I would have wanted it to be a love triangle. Yes.
There were a few points in this book that I was worried
that it would get a bit love triangle-y.
Yes.
Yeah. So, my worry is that, so we have, like, again, not to spoil much, but again, if you're listening, then you're gonna get spoilers. So, this book...
Yeah, I almost feel like we should say... It's a hard one to read along with, because there's just so many things that have to be pointed out.
Yeah.
And, like, I guess it's kind of the same with all the Throne of Glass books, and, like, we'll try to keep it as little as possible, but I almost feel like if you can actually read the first 9 chapters of this book and listen to our podcast and not immediately devour the rest of the book in less than a week.
Props.
I don't know if it's the book for you. Like, because I finished it in, like, I don't know, I want to say 4 or 5 days while on a vacation.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't like a relaxing vacation. It was like an actual, like, we were doing shit vacation most of the time.
Yeah. I was a day and a half. And that was only because I had to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, if I didn't have to sleep.
Imagine.
I know. I totally would have stayed up to read the rest of it. But there was just, like, I still had, like, 200 pages left. And it was, like, midnight. And I was like, I guess I'll go to sleep. And then I woke up the next morning and I sat and finished it. So.
Is that less than 24
hours?
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I say a day and a half, but I mean a day, I guess.
Yeah. Less than hours, really?
Yes. In hours, it was less than a day.
Yeah.
And then I immediately started it again so that I could take notes for this.
Because, so we had decided, we were like, shit, it's so popular. We should probably do it on the podcast. And, like, I have read books for our book club for the first time while we've done it.
Yeah.
I, like, A Touch of Darkness is one I can think of off the top of my head.
X-Hex.
And, like, yes, yeah, we both did that one. And I think for some of them, when we recorded, I had only read up until that point.
Yeah.
So we had decided we were going to do it for the book club because we're like, shit, it is so fucking popular. We may as well. Even if we don't love it, we can probably critique it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously we loved it so much that we couldn't put it down.
Yeah, so it's funny because I anticipated, so like the way we do it is we split it up into chapters and then we divide the chapters for each week in half so that we each have a section for note taking. And I was like, I will just power through first time reading it and I'll take my notes at the same time so that I only have to read it once.
Yeah.
And
it's a hefty fucking book.
Yeah, it's 500 pages. Yeah. Anyway, that did not happen because I read it and I was like, I don't want to take the notes right now. I just want to read it.
Yeah.
So I did. And then I went back through it again to take the notes.
Yeah. And yeah, I am only on my second read, so I've only read up until this week. This read. But I literally just finished it a month ago.
Yeah.
I guess for the first time. Might not even be a full month. Yeah. So yeah, that is our journey with Fourth Wing.
Yeah.
So just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone. There are going to be times when we say something that maybe gives something away.
We apologize.
We do, but it's one of the main reasons that I'm glad that we're doing a second read is to catch the times that this one particular thing happens.
Yes.
Anyway, not the point. And things might get saucy.
They might. So obviously it is October, so Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros is our October book. So Rebecca is...
Spooky! It's not, though. It's not a spooky book. No. It's just good. Sorry, guys.
So Rebecca is a #1 New York Times, USA Today, Sunday Times, and Wall Street Journal bestselling author of over 15 novels, including Fourth Wing. She is also the recipient of the Colorado Romance Writers Award of Excellence in New Adult for Eyes Turned Skyward from her Flight and Glory series. So, that's fun for her. The second book in this series, which is called the Empyrean series, Iron Flame, is being released on November 7th. So get those pre-orders in.
And you'll get 500 points at Indigo Chapters Goals. Yeah, apparently there are going to be 5 books in the series, so that is scary.
Terrifying. Because we know what happens in the end. We do have, like, a main twosome, I'll say. Like, I actually posted on the Facebook group that one of the Facebook groups I'm in for books, everyone was commenting on, like, how did you find Fourth Wing? Like, what's fourth, like, I'm about to start it. Like, what are everyone's thoughts? And I literally just said, I just don't want a Tamlin the Tool situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we have 4 more books, and we already have met our main twosome, and they've sort of already, like, again, spoiler alert, they've established a connection. So, like, is he gonna die? Is she gonna... I don't think she's gonna die, but, like, is somebody gonna die? Because there's 4 more books. That's a lot.
Yeah. And obviously, like, this book does set up a lot of story. I understand there's many places it can go. And it doesn't end up... Like, it doesn't end happy.
No.
So I get it, but I'm also like, 500-page books?
Yeah. Who's gonna die?
Well.
Or be a tool.
People die. People do
die.
People die in this book.
But, like,
spoiler
a lot
trigger.
of people die in these books. But, like...
Yeah, well, yeah. So, this is our first week, obviously, with this book. And we're doing chapters 1 to 9. Each chapter kind of starts out with a little quote. And the first chapter starts out with a quote from the Codex, and it says, "A dragon without its rider is a tragedy, and a rider without their dragon is dead." Which seems intense, and we'll get more on that at some point. So it's Conscription Day, which is apparently the deadliest day at... This is one book that I haven't listened to, so I don't know how words are said, but Basgiath College? War College?
Sure.
Basgiath.
We're going to say Basgiath. Or with a British accent, Basgiath. Okay. I know that was actually terrible. Basgiath.
Yeah, I liked it.
I know British people don't say
I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah. And our main character thinks that she's fucked. So she's currently climbing the stairs to her mother's office, and she's already winded. There are apparently thousands of 20-year-olds waiting to enter a 3-year program in their chosen quadrant. So you can either be a healer, a scribe, infantry, or a rider. Hundreds have been training to enter the rider's quadrant since birth, but Violet, our main character, has only had 6 months of training. And weak people don't survive in the rider's quadrant because the dragons make sure of that. We also get that this kingdom that she is in is at war with another kingdom, the kingdom of Poromiel, and they have griffin riders. So that's something. Dragon riders v. griffin riders. So Violet goes to the general's office, and the general is her mother, and she can hear her sister arguing inside that her mother is sending her to die. So that's ideal. Violet actually doesn't really want to go to the Rider's Quadrant. She's actually spent her entire life training to be a scribe with her father, but he has since died. Mm-hmm. We also get a bit of a description of her. She has pale skin and hair from a fever that almost killed her mother when she was pregnant and stole, I put that in quotation marks, all of Violet's coloring and strength.
Can I ask a question?
I guess.
Do we, apart from, and I feel like this is just something, not a question, because I know that you're only as likely to know the answer as I am. Is there, I'm wondering if, are there physical resemblances between Violet and her mother?
Oh. Do you think she's not her mother's daughter?
I'm wondering, yes.
Interesting. Because, yeah, she does say a bit later that her mother tolerates her, respects her sister Myra, but she actually loved their brother Brennan, who has also died.
And, like, she just, like, so we'll find out very soon that her mother is forcing Violet to conscript as a rider instead of what she wanted to do as a scribe, even knowing that, like, 90% of conscriptees into the rider quadrant die, but she's still, like, forcing her to do it, knowing she hasn't had the training, knowing she doesn't want to do it, but she's still making her do it. Could that be because maybe she doesn't care about her because it's not her real child?
Yeah, that is a good point. I kind of had a different take on it, though.
Okay.
I thought that the way she looks must be, like, what is that word? Prophesized?
Oh.
Like, there would be a child, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, well, maybe if she dies, I don't have to worry about this happening.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, I'll buy that too.
Something like that. Or it could easily just be like, when her mother was pregnant, she almost died. And maybe she lost some of her power and magic and shit during that time. Like, maybe the pregnancy was so bad that she hated the child afterwards. And I don't just mean, like, the pregnancy was bad. I mean, like, if she had a fever that almost killed her. Like, almost killed the mother. Like, that is...
Yeah.
a lot. Maybe she resents her for that. It could be as little. I know that's not little, but yeah. There's a lot there, and it really could go anywhere. And I don't know if I'm reading too much into shit because I'm crazy, or if, like, I don't know. There's just so much. Should probably read another series of hers, even though I think most of her other series are
straight
more like
romance, I think.
Yeah, happily ever after each book. Like, the next book in the series is based on a different character. I don't know for sure if that's true, but that is what I assume. Anyway, Violet enters the room, and Myra and their mother are arguing, and Myra says that their dad wouldn't want this, but their mother says that she loved him, but he's dead, so she doubts he wants much these days. Which is just like, I guess, but you're getting how cold-hearted the mother is. I guess at least she did love him, but it's still a bit much. Her mother tells Violet that if she goes to the I cannot, for the life of me, say scribe quadrant. I say scribe because I put the Q in the first word, and the amount of times that I've said it, you would not believe how many times I have said it. So her mother says if she goes to the scribe quadrant, that she'll pull her back by her braid and just bring her back to the rider's quadrant.
That's
but
so
she
nice.
also tells, yeah, she's such a
loving
nice,
mother,
supporting mother. Yeah. But yeah, her mother also tells Myra that Violet deals with more pain by lunch than Myra does in a full week. So it's interesting because, like,
that sounds almost complimentary.
Yes.
She's saying she's tough.
Yeah. And, like, it also means, like, there's something going on with Violet, which we kind of knew. Like, her coloring and her strength are down because of her birth, basically. Yeah. A fever that her mother had. So, yeah. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
So, Myra asks if their mother really wants to bury another child.
Pretty asshole thing to say, actually.
It is very asshole thing to say. And her mother reasonably gets pissed at this. And we get that, like, Violet can tell that she is, like, starting to reach for her power or something. Like, we get that her mother has storm-wielding signet. And it's through her dragon, Amzir. Which the first time I read, I was like, these words, I have no fucking idea what's going on. Now at least I understand what a signet is, but I was like, what the fuck?
Well, so this is the thing. This first bit, like, actually, the whole book is jam-packed. Like, almost everything that happens is necessary to understanding the overall plot and, like, just everything that goes on. So, like,
yeah.
Like, it's so hard to decide what to cut and what to keep because everything was necessary.
Yeah, and then it's also like they explain some things this first 4 chapters that I'm like, do they not explain this again? And I need to, like, talk about this? I don't remember. But, like, I don't remember if they bring up her mother's dragon or her power again. But when I read this the first time, I was like, signet, don't know what the fuck that is. Yeah. Storm wielding, who knows? And I was like, just leave it.
Yeah.
But when you think about what she gets as her power,
it makes sense.
You get the connection and you're like, oh, cool. But I never remembered. Anyway. So Violet has scored in the top quarter for speed and agility during her entrance exam. So, like, that's pretty impressive.
Considering she's barely had time to train.
Yeah. Although I do think that the exam, like, even the endurance exam, I think it's for everybody in every quadrant. So, like, the top quarter is only, like...
Do you?
Yeah. Oh. I think to get into this college, because, like, if you don't get into this college, you have to serve in the regular army, and you're basically just like...
I thought that was infantry, though.
A soldier. Oh, is it? Honestly, there's so much shit.
Yeah, I think...
But you'd think they'd still need agility and speed.
I think infantry is just, like, foot soldiers.
But then, if you don't make it into the college, you don't serve?
Maybe, I guess not.
When you just not pass.
I don't know.
Pride in country?
I guess.
I don't really understand the system, because I thought that everybody had to.
Yeah, so this is the thing. Does everybody have to conscript at the age of 20, or is it optional?
Yeah, I don't know. And I still don't know when I read the whole book, and then I read part of it again.
Yeah.
I'll keep my eye out this time, but I think I was reading it, and it was like, some people volunteer, some people are conscripted, and I was like, that's not an answer. I don't understand.
Half an answer.
Yes, some people have choice. Because we hear about a choice later on this week. Anyway, we'll get there when we get there. And maybe it'll come up in other books. But her mother also tells her at this point that she won't be able to acknowledge her for the next 3 years because she's her far superior. And Violet won't get any special treatment. And that, if anything, people will come after her even more until she proves herself. So that is ideal. That's what you're hoping for when you're going into a violent school.
I love that. I won't be able to acknowledge you for 3 whole years.
Acknowledge you.
But, like, this is another thing I don't understand. Because, so, like, I understand there's a rule where you're not allowed to contact home the first year. That's a rule. After that, though, you can contact home. So why can't her and her mother talk after year 1?
Because her mother hates
They live in the same place.
Yeah. And, like, they see each other during this book, and her mom is a dick.
Yes.
Yeah.
A 1,000,000%.
Yep. So, Violet and her sister go back to Violet's room, and Myra immediately just, like, starts repacking Violet's pack, because she's like, this is too heavy for you. She says she's doing for Violet what Brennan did for her before she started writer school.
I almost just called it camp.
Camp. 3-year camp where most people die. Myra gives her a new black outfit and boots, and she says that the boots that Violet is wearing now are too slippery to actually get her across the parapet, especially since it's gonna rain. And we also don't know what the fuck that is. You just hear it and you're like, okay.
Yeah, you just, like, take it. You're like, okay, cool, I guess. Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I kind of hate starting new fantasy books because there's just too much information, and my brain is like, why are you doing this to me?
So much fucking world building. It's insane.
And I get it. And, like, I like the way this is done because it kind of... I do actually like this because it kind of throws you in. It's not too much info dumping. It's just like, here's the action. You'll figure it out as you go. But then I'm also like, I don't like it because I'm like, what is happening?
I know, it's one of those,
you
like,
cannot please me.
It is. It's one of those, like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's no way.
100%. I don't know the best way. But I do like it in this book once I kind of figured some shit out. So her sister's pulling all her shit out of her bag, but Violet wants to keep a book from her father, and it's stories that warn against the lure of magic and actually demonize dragons, and it's about Vernon and their wyverns. But Myra asks if she's ready to die for this book. And Myra says that, like, their father can't save her. He tried. And is she going to die as a scribe or live as a writer? So Violet basically decides that she should get rid of the books because it's hard enough going across a parapet anyway, let alone with a heavy-ass bag full of books.
Which I also had to look up what a parapet was.
I just waited until it came up and then figured it out then.
That's nice.
I just didn't look it up. I was like, signet, parapet, these are all fantasy words.
Not as bad as some, though.
I know a parapet is an actual thing, though. Yeah. Her sister also puts a vest on her, and it has little sheaths in it for daggers on her ribs, which sounds pretty cool. I want one.
Me too.
And it also has a dragon scale from Myra's Dragon Teen that was shrunken down and, like, stitched in over her heart for protection.
I thought there were dragon scales all over that thing. I thought it was all made of dragon scales.
Don't know.
Oh.
I thought it was just over her heart, but I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe it's everywhere.
Okay, whatever.
Should have just got a full body
She got
suit.
a dragon scale vest.
Yes. Myra braids Violet's hair back, and she tells her that she should have cut it because it's a liability, which is, like, such a thing that people tell women, like, when you're, like, gonna get into fights and shit. Like, someone can use your hair against you.
I hate it.
Yeah. It's also super unique because it is, like, the pigment is gone in the bottom of her hair, so people are going to recognize her. But Violet says, like, the pigment, no matter what length her hair is, the pigment is gone at the bottom, so, like, there's not much she can do about it.
But I'm sorry, if
like,
her hair is the
anyway.
length that it is, if she were to cut the pigment off, it wouldn't be there.
Yeah, but I guess eventually it would just...
Eventually. But
Yeah.
for the first little bit after a fresh cut...
Yeah, you could just cut it as it grows.
It would just not be there. And then when it starts to show up, just trim it again.
Yeah. I guess it goes faster.
I guess.
Than you can... The pigment shows up faster than it grows, so eventually she'd just, like, have no hair.
Great.
Is probably the norm. I'm assuming most women in the military have buzz cuts and stuff. So, like, in this military, like, I know. Yeah. Myra then tells her brain is her best weapon to outsmart them and to be observant. And she asks if Violet has read the Codex. And, of course, she did multiple times. You're like, do you not know who your sister is? Like, of course she read it. And apparently, riders can kill each other at any time because fewer candidates means better odds to get a dragon. But you can't be attacked while sleeping. But Myra does tell her that she should sleep in her vest anyway. So, you know.
This is a dangerous place.
I can't imagine, like, going into a place and being like...
Where anybody can kill you at any time and it's okay.
Yeah, and wanting to be there. Like, I relate to Violet so much in this. I'm like, yeah, why would anybody decide to do this? Like, dragons sound cool and all, but...
Yeah, I totally also would not do it, but I can see the appeal for people that are, like, really tough and strong and want to prove their toughness.
Yeah, I guess if you've trained your whole life for it, sure. But I also can only imagine being thrown into it. I would be Violet. I'd be like, ooh, no.
Yeah, I'd be like, you're signing, I'm dead. Like, I'm just gonna die.
Yeah, I'd probably just jump off the parapet. I wonder if anyone does that. They're like, fuck this, I don't want to deal with that. Anyway, not the point. Violet says that she's not ready, and her sister says she wasn't ready either. And she actually spent her whole life training for this. So it's like kind of a sweet moment that they have. And Violet says to herself that she's not going to die today. Myra pulls her into like a corridor to hug her so that no one can see them because women in emotion. And Myra tells her that she loves her and not to become another name on the death roll. And then she tells her to find Dane Ados, I guess, when she gets inside. And Violet thinks it's been a year since she's seen him, but they were friends before, like they were childhood friends, until he went there when she was 19, I guess. And she thinks they could have been more than friends. And sometimes he looked at her like she was worth noticing. And you're like, no, but like, that just shows how low the bar is.
Yeah.
Like, her mother is so shitty that some snot-nosed kid looks at her like she's not nothing. And she's like, oh my god, I'm in love.
Yeah. No, it's a good point.
I feel so bad. Everybody's worth noticing. Anyway, her sister sees the look on her face and just tells her not to mess around with anyone outside of her year. She's like, you can sleep with any of the first years you want, but do not sleep with anyone higher. Which is like,
essentially putting Dane on the do not go list.
Fuck list. Yeah. Yeah. Which is fair, like, especially in, like, a school like this, like, favoritism will get you places, and if people think that you slept to the top, like, it's a sad reality.
They'll kill you.
Of, yes. Well, yeah, in this place, they'll kill you. So, yeah. So, Navir, which is the name of...
the country?
The kingdom, I think.
We're calling it a kingdom.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Yes. Has 6 provinces who send candidates for military service, and everyone has to pass a written and agility test exam to get into this college. So I don't know what happens if you don't.
It sounds like they send people, like the best people. So if you're
to the
like
college.
they need people to run the real world too, so they can't send everybody.
So they're like, we're gonna send the best people to do army, and the worst people can do everything else.
Hey, are you smart enough to get into war college? No. Have I ever told you about being a lawyer?
Have I ever told you about being a lawyer? Yeah. So Violet can see people like going to other quadrants, and she sees people like going to the scribe.
I feel like we should do a count. Like 1, 2.
Do you find it hard to say? Have you tried to say it out loud?
Scribe quadrant?
Yeah. We'll see if you have to say it. I think I have to say it the most, but if you ever have to say it like off the cuff, we'll see.
We shall. Yeah. I mean, I might have just as many issues.
So she sees people going through the scribe quadrant and thinks of like the written test that you have to do there. And like I guess each quadrant actually has another test to make sure like you pass to get in there. But I don't think any of the other ones you fucking die if you don't pass the written test. They just shoot you.
Yikes.
No, then you go become a lawyer, I guess. Yeah. So Violet kind of starts to panic, but Myra's like, nope, let's go to the registration line. If you like let people go ahead of you, you'll just panic more. She also gives her some advice not to look down, to keep her arms out, and not to seek friendships but alliances.
So lonely. I wouldn't be able to not want a friend.
Right? It's not possible. Violet then sees a separatist's kid, and they have a You know what it is? You know what it is? I know what it is now. A Drellic. They have a Drellic. I'm trying to read, and I'm slurring my words together. And some of them just go together really well, like scribe. And Drellic. Anyway, so these kids have dragon relics on them that mark them. So apparently General Melgrins, his dragon, gave these kids the relic that they have. When he killed their parents, because their parents were separatists, so they punished the kids, killed the parents. Good planning all around.
Dystopian, like, very dystopian novel scenario. Yeah.
Most of these separatists were from the province Tirandor.
Lovely.
That's how we're saying it.
That is how we're saying it.
Myra sees the separatist's kid as well, and then she's like, oh shit, Violet, stay away from Zayden Ryerson. He's a 3rd-year wing leader, and he obviously has a dragon, because you can't get to 3rd year without one. And he will kill her when he finds out who she is. His father was the great betrayer who led the rebellion. And the children of all of the separatists are conscripted as punishment for their parents' betrayal, I guess.
That's so nice. I love when kids are punished for the sins of their parents. Like,
yeah, definitely doesn't make anyone bitter.
Yeah, because, the kids obviously had a hand in the rebellion and told their parents what to do.
Yeah. And some of them we find out, like, later on in this book are fucking babies.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so they get to the registration table, and there's a captain there who is a scribe, and he's surprised to see Violet and tells her that she had so much promise as a scribe. Which is just so shitty. Like, why are you doing that? There's a rider at the table too, and he is just in awe of Myra and, like, calls out some of the shit that she's done and the awards she's gotten. So then Violet leaves Myra and starts walking up a shit ton of stairs, basically. And the girl in front of Violet says that, like, Myra, the name Sorengale, like, that's a lot to live up to. And the girl in front of her asks if Violet is a Sorengale like the general. And she obviously says yes. And they introduce themselves to each other. So the girl in front of her is Rhiannon Matthias. And the boy is Dylan.
No last name.
No reason for that.
Dylan doesn't get a last name.
Nope. Violet also just knows some random facts. She knows that last year 3 people died on this staircase alone before they even got to the parapet, and that there are 250 steps to it. So, like, they're walking up these staircases. Rhiannon and Dylan are talking about how, like, this is a super dream come true for them. Like, they've wanted to do this their whole lives. Dylan does say that his mother begged him not to go, but Rhiannon says she has a twin sister who is married and expecting a baby, so her parents are kind of fine with her wanting to do this, which is just interesting. Because, like, her twin sister is obviously 20 as well, but she just must have decided not to go.
No, and I guess she's a stay-at-home mom now. Because they can't very well... Like, I almost feel like her being pregnant sort of gets her out of this whole mess. Cause
yeah, is that what's happening?
It's like, oh, you're married and pregnant? Well, we obviously can't expect you to fight to the death.
Yeah.
So, you stay at home and pump out kids.
We need more soldiers.
And maybe you're, like, so, like, her husband, like, where is he at? Is he already a soldier? Like, what's...
Or did he come back, like, is he old?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Maybe he's old.
He could be old.
And, like...
Which is the worst thing.
It's pretty darn bad.
It's not, I'm sorry.
But can I just say, if I had to choose between marrying someone old and getting pregnant and going to a death school, I'd probably get married and get pregnant from the old person.
But wouldn't you be a scribe?
Well, okay, yes. I would be a scribe. You're right.
100%. We'd be scribes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But, like...
You wouldn't have to marry an
But
old
at the same time, I probably wouldn't pass the, if there was, like, a speed test, like that speed and agility test, I would not pass.
We'd train you for that shit. We'd get there. She was in the top quarter of it. So, like, it can't be, like, she is fast, but she's not, like, the fastest ever.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
You know? She only had 6 months of training. We can put in 6 months of training.
Yeah, good point.
Anyway, Violet then says that she was voluntold that she had to be in this quadrant, which is true, but I'm also like, you probably shouldn't be telling people this. You look like you don't want to be here.
But she doesn't. Why lie about it?
Yeah. They kind of talk about how riders get better pay than any of the other officers, and they actually have less rules. Their only rules are what are in the codex. And they can also marry immediately after graduation, and it's probably because they die so often. Yeah. But I guess none of the other officers can get married immediately after graduation. But Dylan shows them a ring that he has around his neck for his girlfriend, who he's going to marry in 3 years.
Aww.
And you're like, Dylan with no last name, you're fucked.
Also, like, what if you meet someone at this, like, college?
Yeah, but you know, people leave high school and go to university and they're like, we're in love forever.
Yeah, and then half the time, they end up fooling around drunk at parties on their forever girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever.
At least Dylan doesn't do that, I guess.
That's true.
A guy behind them shows up and he, like, actually makes a second joke about how Violet is so small and how she's going to be screwed when she's on the parapet and she's just going to blow off.
Yeah.
And you're like, why? Why are you being so dumb? But whatever. So they get high enough on the stairs that they can actually see the storm clouds. And Violet asks Rhiannon to see her shoes. And she notices that they're super smooth, like Violet's used to be, before her sister gave her the new one. And Violet insists that they switch left shoes, which they actually do pretty quickly and, like, nobody notices. It's like, sure. They can see the parapet, and Violet knows, like, 15% of candidates normally die on this parapet. Because if you can't walk across it, you can't fight on a dragon's back, which I guess is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like everything that they test them on is a test to see if they can... There's, like, an equivocal... oh my god, words.
Ooh, squad.
An equivalent skill that, like, relates to what you do on a dragon's back.
Yeah, for sure.
So, like, this one simulates walking on the dragon's back. Because we need to do that all the time.
Yeah. So there's somebody there recording everybody's name, and then a man turns and looks in Violet's direction. And in her mind, she thinks her heart simply stops. What kind of introduction is this? How are we supposed to not fall in love with this man?
Yeah. Just read.
But he is tall, dark, strong, and hot as hell. Like, super distractingly hot. Like, it's exquisite. She says the word exquisite in her brain when she looks at him. Like, he is too hot to be around.
Too hot to handle.
Yes, too hot to handle. So Dylan steps onto the parapet, and someone says, like, I think the guy writing the names says, "Are you ready for the next one, Ryerson?" And around the same time, Rhiannon says, "Are you ready for this, Sorngale?" And they're both like, what? And they look at each other, and of course it's Hot McHotterson. That is Xaden Ryerson.
Yeah, so the one guy that she needs to stay away from is the one guy that she's, like, already, like...
panting over.
I was gonna say, like, wet
for. Yeah. Both.
I felt like it was a...
panting upstairs and down. That's so gross. I had to. Oh, God. At least I didn't say drooling. Sorry. Anyway, so he stares at her and she notices his relic. And it's like giant. It starts at his left wrist, and then she can see that it, like, comes out the top of his shirt up on his throat. And she whispers, "Oh shit." And she feels like he hears her, which I think has something to do with his sickness.
Maybe.
He steps towards her and asks if she's General Sorngale's youngest, and she can feel his hatred immediately. And I'm like, is it hatred? Are we sure? Are we super sure?
You can feel something.
And she just responds to him, "You're Fen Ryerson's son." And all she can think is that Myra said that he would kill her as soon as he figured out who she was. And she's just like, he can easily throw her off of this before she even has a chance to walk on the parapet. Which would just be so shitty.
Yeah.
He then says that her mother captured and oversaw the execution of his father. And she says, your father killed my older brother. Seems like we're even.
Yes.
And he says, yeah.
Right.
Like, yes. Shitty. Both shitty
also,
things.
Also, parents did all of these things. It has nothing to do with the two of you.
Yeah. And, like, yeah. So shitty. But he says, hardly. And you're like, does hardly mean something different now? Flip this table. I hate reading books a second time. So they're hardly even is what we're assuming he means. Then his gaze drops over her like he's memorizing every detail. God.
I just figured that out.
Hardly?
Yes, because of the end.
Yeah, that's what
Yikes!
Right?
Yikes.
So he's looking at her like he's trying to memorize every detail or looking for any weakness, is what she thinks. Then Rhiannon asks if she's all right, and Xaden asks if they're friends, and Rhiannon says they just met on the stairs, and he sees their shoes, and obviously that they've switched them, and he just says, interesting.
But it is, because she literally gave, like, half of her lifeline to a stranger.
Oh, for sure. And, like, if he finds that interesting, is it because he's like, oh, what an idiot, she's not out for herself? Or is he like, oh, she, like, is a nice person who cares about this stranger? Like, we don't know what's going on in his brain, because we don't know if he's good or evil.
Yeah. This is actually a point of view switch story that I would read. Like, you know how authors
die for it.
Come out with, like, the first book in the guy's point of view?
Twilight, anyone.
Touch of Darkness.
Yeah, I haven't read that either, but yeah.
Fucking Blood and Ash.
Allegedly. Yeah.
Like, they all do it.
They do, but I would kill for this one.
Yeah, I would actually, I would really enjoy reading this one. I haven't read one before.
Although, you know...
And I would read this.
Yeah. You know what I think would be really good is actually if somebody fanficked it. Yeah. Because, like, the Reese fanfiction point of view of all the Akatar books, that...
It was great.
I can't remember who it is, but it is great. I think we've talked about it before in one of our intros, because it's fucking great. Yeah. Violet then straight up asks him if he's going to kill her.
Just very honest and upfront. Like, I really appreciate it.
I love it. What else are you going to do? Like, she doesn't even want to be here. I love it. But they hear a scream, and they see Dylan slip and fall off the parapet.
So Dylan dead.
Dylan, no last name, has deceased.
So his poor mother that didn't even want him to come, and his poor girlfriend that he was going to marry after the 3 years, not happening anymore.
It's not great.
And maybe they knew this would happen, which is why they didn't want him to go.
Yes. Well, that's a thing. But Xaden watches her the whole time this is happening. Like, he doesn't look back at the scream. Like, he's just used to it by now. But he just is staring at her, and she looks back. He asks her why he would waste his energy killing her when the parapet will just do it for him. You're like, woof. Fair.
Not wrong.
Right? So the second chapter, and I didn't do this for everything, but like for some of them I did take the quotes from the chapters, because sometimes they're like...
important.
Yeah. But the second chapter quote starts, it says, like, there's a misconception that it's kill or be killed in the Riders Quadrant. Riders as a whole aren't out to assassinate other candidates unless there's a shortage of dragons that year, or a cadet is a liability to their wing. Then things may get interesting. So that's interesting in itself. Mm-hmm. So Violet is thinking, I will not die today. And she basically keeps saying it as a mantra. mantra, however you say that word. And while she's saying that, Rhiannon gives her name, then says she'll wait for Violet on the other side, and she steps out onto the parapet. And Violet sends a prayer to Zinal, the god of luck. I don't know if the gods are important in this story, because I don't know what the next books are about. So I was like, I guess I'll bring up that there's a god of luck. Like, I don't know anything. This is the issue with doing books that aren't complete series. Anyway, then Violet tells the guy her name, the guy that's not Xaden, and thunder cracks overhead, and the sound is oddly comforting to Violet, even though she knows that, like, the downpour and a slick parapet will probably kill her. But it's just interesting, the relationship she has with thunder.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But I guess it could have something to do with
That's what I'm thinking. But why would she then find comfort in it?
Yeah, interesting. The guy that's writing her name down asks if she's, like, Sorengale, as in General Sorengale, and Violet is just like, it's getting a bit old already that people are asking her this. But she thinks, like, if she lives, she's just going to be compared to her sister, and people are going to wonder if she's, like, a naturally gifted rider like Myra, or a brilliant strategist like Brennan, or if they'll see the truth that she's neither of that. So, eek. And then the guy actually says he thought that the general only had one daughter.
Yee.
And Violet just answers that she gets that a lot, which is just so shitty. Her mother is a piece of shit.
But, like, does that not lend credence to my maybe it's not her mother theory?
Maybe. That is a good point. Maybe she only has one daughter. Maybe that's why. So Violet basically steps forward, and the wind pushes her. She's still in the archway, and the wind pushes her over, and she has to hold onto the wall. And the asshole behind her asks how she's going to be able to ride with that kind of balance. And you're kind of like, he might have a bit of a point.
Yeah.
But he tells his name now. He's Jack Barlow, and he says he's going to be wing leader one day.
Sure he will.
Cool. Xaden then tells her that she better get going. And then as she's, like, getting ready to step out, Jack lunges towards her to push her off. So she starts, like, actually giving her. But you're like, was he warning her?
Me, I think he was.
I know. I'm like, am I reading too much into everything? No. Yes, I am.
No, it's fine.
And I'm okay with being delusional. Yeah. So obviously this parapet is nothing like Violet practiced, but she starts to think about what she knows, which is history.
So,
and this is a thing that she does a lot.
I just need to clarify that a parapet is a narrow, like, raised, like, platform, but it's super narrow. It's like a ledge of a roof.
Yeah, it's 18 inches wide, I think they said.
Yeah, and it just goes from, like, one end of a building to another.
Yeah, and there's a 200-foot drop or something, meter drop. There's a large drop, you will die.
Yes.
Not great. So yeah, so she's out on this parapet, she's walking across, and then she starts, like, listing the history of this kingdom. And you're like, this is not how I wanted to get my information.
This is how we get it, a lot.
This is how we get a lot of it, and it comes up a few times. But, so this continent has two kingdoms, and they've been at war for 400 years. One is Navir, which is the larger of the two, and has 6 unique provinces. And that is where this is taking place, in Navir. While she's listing off all of this stuff, there was more, I just condensed it. She makes it halfway, but the wind actually pushes her, and she ends up, like, slipping, and she has to grab the parapet and make herself small, and, like, wait until the wind passes, and then she gets up again. So then we get a bit more history. Tyrrendor was actually the last province to join the allegiance of this kingdom, and it's the only province that has attempted secession And also the kingdom of Poromiel is known for textiles, grains, and gems capable of amplifying minor magics. And Navir is known for timber, deer, and elk. And they have signed a trade agreement. It was signed like over 200 years ago. And they now trade 4 times a year. So that is what I took to be important out of everything she said going right there. At this point, she looks back and she sees that Jack has stopped about a quarter way across the parapet. She's already over halfway across. But he's facing the candidate behind him, and as the candidate gets towards him, he grabs the straps of his backpack and just throws him off the side. And then he yells, "You're next, Sorengale," and starts going towards her, and he is much quicker than she is on this parapet. So she starts going again, but then another gust of wind slams into her, and her left foot slips off of the parapet, and she falls down, and her knee slams into the stone. And she accidentally looks down, which her sister told her not to do, and is also not good, because it's very far. But she thinks, like, she's not going to die today. And Jack is calling out to her again, but she bursts to her feet, and she thinks, like, if she falls, it's her own fault. But she's not going to let him murder her.
Yeah.
And then she does kind of think, like, maybe he thinks she's a liability and that's why he's doing this. Or maybe he's just a fucking asshole.
I vote for fucking asshole.
Yeah. We'll get more of him, I'm sure. In front of her, she actually sees Rhiannon step to safety, which is good. And she hustles forward, but she can still hear Jack behind her mocking her. And she's kind of like shoving the fear back behind locked iron bars in her mind, which is also kind of a thing that comes up a bit. And she can see the end, and they basically make it there. And she gets off the parapet with like seconds to spare before Jack could have like killed her. And she spins and gets a dagger out of her ribs and puts it right up to his balls.
Love it.
It's so here for it. And she says she thinks she'll be safe for now. And he says he's not quite sure. But she quotes the Codex at him and says that like he can't injure her during a quadrant formation. And he says he doesn't give a shit. And he kind of starts moving forward again. And her dagger like slices through the first layer of his pants. And you're like, what are you doing, man? Why would you do that?
Are you talking about him? Why would he do that, or why would she?
Yeah. Why would you move forward when somebody has a dagger to your balls?
I'm assuming he doesn't think she'll actually use them.
I think she would. But yeah. A rider that's just on the other side asks her name, because obviously there's one on each side recording who makes it. And she tells her and says, yes, like the general, before that woman can even ask. And she says she's not surprised with that maneuver. And it's like kind of a compliment, and she kind of likes it. Then a male rider says, Cadet Sorengale has you by the actual balls. And she's right. If he got down and killed her now, they would just immediately execute him because it's against the Codex. So, like, that's intense. If he does say, though, if he wants to kill her, he'll have to do it in the sparring ring or on his own time. And that right now, Jack isn't a cadet yet. And Violet is a cadet because she's touched the ground, but he's still up on the parapet. And Violet basically just asks if Jack's gonna follow the rules, and then like lowers the dagger and lets him get down. And he steps down and says that she's dead and he's gonna be the one to kill her.
Yikes. Oof. But this is what I love. So like, I love that they're establishing her as a character. So like, you know how they have those, like, typical, like, oh, she's so smart, but then she's also going to be quiet and reserved. But, like, she doesn't seem like that. Like, she's smart and weak, but she's not timid. So, like, usually the way they create characters is, like, if they're weak of, like, body, they tend to be more soft-spoken and, like, oh, don't hurt me. You know, like, damsel in distressy. But, like, she's weak, but she covers it up with a lot of sass and bravado, which I actually love.
Yeah. And, like, her weakness is obviously, like, something that she can't really do much about. So, like, I do like showing that people have multitudes and, like, they can have weaknesses in some places, but still be a strong person. Because she is, she is physically weaker, obviously, than probably everybody in this quadrant, but she's a strong person. So now we have chapter 3, and I didn't quite quote it, but they basically just say, like, blue dragons are known for their formidable size, especially the rare blue daggertail, whose spikes at the tip of their tail can disembowel an enemy with one flick. So I read this, and I texted Kristen immediately, and I was like, I guess she's gonna get a blue dragon, because blue dragons are rare. Yeah. So Violet thinks to herself she isn't too worried about Jack, because Xaden is likely going to kill her first anyway. Which is just, you know,
I mean,
fair,
there is a pecking order here.
So Jack then, like, jumps down and smells Violet like a dog and then walks away. It's very weird. I'm like, why?
Like, sniffs her? Like he's, like, in heat?
Like, to get her scent so he can, like, chase her down and kill her? Like, I don't
know, man. I think secretly he has a thing for her.
Probably. It's men teasing women. So they like.
I feel like he would definitely be one of those stereotypical, like, I'm a nice guy. Girls never want a nice guy.
He just threw someone off the parapet. I don't think you can say he's a TM nice guy. I'm doing what's best for the wing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he. Oh God, I hate him. So Violet's knee is fucked up, and she can barely walk on it. And Rhiannon comes up to her because she said she'd meet her at the end, and she, like, they're obviously both happy that they made it, but Rhiannon is, like, super pumped, and Violet is kind of not doing okay. Rhiannon does thank her for her boot, though, and she says she would have died without it, but they do need to switch back because they don't want anybody to see that they switched boots.
I know, which I don't understand. I guess, like, maybe it has to do with, like, they don't want to see that they're forming friendship this early.
I guess, but I'm also like...
Because remember, we're not supposed to form friendships, we're supposed to form alliances.
Well, that's what she did. Now Rhiannon owes her, so... Like, it was smart the way she did it. Really. But yeah, it's weird. You're like... I guess also, they said earlier that, like, I guess Rhiannon has a size 8 and she has a size 7. And I'm like, it would hurt, I guess, but it wouldn't be that uncomfortable.
Not a
like,
one size difference, no.
I have a size 9 foot, and I can shove that into a size 7 heel and walk around for a night if I need to.
And you have.
And I will. Well, I probably won't. I'm too old for that shit now. But yeah. Violet is, like, leaning into Rhiannon, and she's starting to feel nauseous, and she's starting to shake. And then they're, like, kind of moving forwards, but, like, Rhiannon is supporting her a lot. And then Dane steps in front of them, and he grabs Violet almost just as her knees give out because she can't hold herself up any longer. And he's saving the day. What a sweet man. But he helps her to a bench, and he asks what she's doing
what
here.
What do you think, fucker?
Right? I'm like, idiot. Obviously, you know what she's doing here. And she just says she's so happy to see him. And, like, she's looking at him, and she's like, damn, he's done a lot. Like, I guess he's worked out a lot, and, like, he's got a beard now. He's super hot, too.
I mean, he has a dragon.
I do appreciate...
I feel like a dragon covers up a multitude of, like, character flaws, and, like I just feel like someone's...
You just think of How to Train Your Dragon, and, like, Hiccup got the girl after he got the dragon.
They're just infinitely hotter when a dragon is involved.
When you have a dragon.
Tell me you don't feel the same.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. But I'm also like, I appreciate that she is just so real in her head, as like the writing in the book is like, damn, he's hot. And like the other guy was like, fuck, he's so hot. I'm like, yeah.
You're allowed. You're allowed to look.
I know. I'm like, I like being in her head. She's also single. She can do whatever she wants. So he gets her to the bench, and then she says she's going to be sick. And he tells her to put her head between her knees. And Rhiannon, like, comes up with them. And Dane asks who the hell she is. And she says that she's Violet's friend. And she kind of, like, hesitates on it for a bit. But then she, like, really rolls with it. Like, she's good people. Yeah. And he tells her, like, Violet is fine. And to tell anyone who asks the same. But she says she wouldn't say anything about Violet. Like, it's nobody else's business, and that Violet actually saved her life. And then Violet tells Rhiannon that Dane is her oldest friend, and he says that he's a second-year cadet, which, like, makes Rhiannon step back.
Oh, he's been there a year longer. Oh.
I know, and I'm like, why is he being so shitty? Because he's a shitty person, and he's trash. But... oh my god, he's KL.
I was just thinking that. It's like KL 2.0.
God. He is, though. If you think about it a little longer, it's more clear. Anyway. Dane tells Violet to, like, take her time. No one can see them where they are. So, like, her sitting with her head between her legs is not a big deal. And he asks her where she's hurt. And she says her knee, and then, like, I guess she undoes her boot and she sits up. And he takes her chin in his fingers like this. It's like this because he has to do this. He has to get this piece. This piece is important, I realized in my reread.
But so he doesn't do that. He just put his chin, her chin.
No, he actually, I think he, like, holds her chin and... up to her temple, like a finger on her chin and one on her temple. A thumb is one of those fingers. And then, so all that happens, and then he asks Violet if she trusts Rhiannon, and she says she does, and he tells Rhiannon that he is Dane Ados, and he's the leader for the second squad flame section, and we're in Violet's head, so we get, like, a squad leader is the highest that a second year can be. So, like, he's done well in the year and a bit that he's been here. But Dane says to, like, go find the woman at the parapet and tell her to put Rhiannon and Violet in Dane's squad, and that, like, this woman will do it because she owes Dane a favor, basically. They switch their shoes back, and then Rhiannon goes, and Dane helps Violet up a set of stairs to his room, and tells her, like, she isn't supposed to be here. She's supposed to be a scribe.
It's like, no shit.
And, yeah. And he asks, like, how this happened, and she says, what do you think? And he just says, your mother. And she's like, duh. Yeah. Like, they get to his room, and, like, they're kind of cute together, and they're kind of jokey, and they're, like, clearly old friends, and they're, like, they have a few nice moments between the moments that you're like, fuck off. Which is kind of why I was like, I wonder how I would have felt about this book if I wasn't an adult who has dealt with shitty people. But she digs a wrap out of her bag, and she's, like, getting ready to put it on her knee, basically. That's the whole point of her coming up here, because she needs to take her pants off. And he says as much as he hates that she's here, he's glad to see her. Which, I don't even hate that. Like, I get that.
Well, especially growing up together. He knows her. He knows what she wanted. So, like, he's allowed to be unhappy she's there, because it's not what she wanted.
Exactly. And if that's the only thing that this was about, he would be a great fucking person. He looks at her with heat, and she thinks maybe they're on the same page now in their romantic feelings. But then she's, like, getting ready to wrap her knee, and he's like, I'll turn around, I won't look. And she's like, you've seen it all before. Like, she's obviously still going to be wearing underwear, but whatever.
Again, I really like this. Like, I like that we're not, that we don't have some, like, bashful, blushing heroine here. Like...
Oh, about her, you mean? Yeah. I thought you were saying you like that he's like, I won't look. I'm respectful.
No, that bothers me. Like, dude, if you're interested in her, like, don't be ashamed to look. Like, if she's hot for you, she doesn't mind if you look.
Yeah. And also, it's the same as a swimsuit. Like, she's just pulling her pants down to, like, wrap her knee. It's not like it's sexual either. Like, he's kind of making it seem more sexual by being like, I'll turn around. And she's like, we literally go skinny dipping, dude. Like, what? But yeah, so she wraps her knee, and she thinks of how it's not only her muscles that are weak, her ligaments are weak too, and she knows how to, like, wrap her joints, and she has since a young age, because, like, she literally has to wrap her knee so that her kneecap stays in place. It's a bit wild. Dane tells her she looks different, and she says the leathers must do it for him. And he says that he's glad that the year apart didn't dull her tongue. And she says she can do quite a few things with her tongue.
Nice euphemism there.
I know. It's like, there's some sexual tension here. And his eyes, like, heat, but he's like, they need to get out of here. And I'm like, they could easily have just had a quickie.
But if it's their first time, like...
Is it? I don't think it is.
Having sex? I don't think they've had sex.
So. Oh, their first time.
Yeah, their first time together. Not their first time separately.
Yes. Yeah, I thought you said her first time. And I was like, I didn't think that was...
I don't think it's her first time, but, like, for their first time together, would you really want it to be a quickie?
No, right? I guess not. But I would have been cool with some sex at, like, chapter 3 of the book. Of course.
Why not?
Yeah. Yeah. So they obviously start leaving the way that they came, and he tells her that there's a door they can sneak her into the scribe quadrant through, and she's shocked that he even is suggesting it. She's like, she literally has to tell him that her mother said that she would pull her out by the braid, basically. We saw that scene, like, and he is like, you're gonna die here. Which I do understand it. Like, he's seen a lot. He knows what happens. And he knows her. But it's just so, like, she has to get over so much to even be here in the first place. And him telling her that she can't do it. And then her having to get over that too. I'm like, she's stronger than I would be. But she actually gets mad at him. And she says she knows the odds. And she's actually already beating them because she made it across the parapet. And he tells her, like, he is impressed, but she will break in the sparring ring. And that's before the dragons even sense that she's... ... And then he kind of, like, he, like, stops talking. And she's like, that I'm what? Less than? And he tries to backpedal, but he says there were, like, 34 healthy candidates that didn't bond with a dragon last year, and they're all going to restart year 1. And, like, if 34 healthy candidates couldn't bond with a dragon, how does she think that she can? So you're like, he's not being very nice. And she tells him not to be an asshole, and she says she knows she's not healthy, but, like, clearly that's something that, like, she deals with all the time. Like, it's just such a shitty, like, he doesn't need to tell her that.
Well, like, no one knows her own limitations better than she does.
Exactly. And, like, even her mother was like, she deals with more pain by lunch than you do in a week. Like, her mother doesn't even like her. But Dane literally just won't let up on it, and he wants to take her to the scribe quadrant, and he knows her better than almost anyone in her life, so it hurts her to her core that he is saying these things about her. And they argue a bit, but she tells him, like, her mother's just going to drag her back. It's graduate the Rider's Quadrant, or she's just a name on a stone. And he says, like, he kind of lets it go, and he says they'll just figure it out later. But, like, in her head, she's like, cool, I'm just going to go to to the rider quadrant and become a rider. And in his head, he's like, I'll figure out how to get you out of here later. So she goes out a door to meet the first years, and he goes to a different door, and she goes out to the courtyard and finds Rhiannon, who is chatting to a different cadet, Tara, and they all just stand around talking, and like 2 hours pass as more candidates come across the parapet. And then after the 2 hours, the last candidates walk off the parapet, followed by the 3 people that were like taking the names and stuff. So obviously Xaden is among them. And if I didn't love him before, Violet thinks to herself that Xaden moves like a shark and everyone gives him a wide berth. And I'm like, huh.
You love it. Because he loves...
I love it so much.
That's hot, actually. And do you know what the unfortunate thing is? Nobody is ever going to say that they moved like an orca whale. Unless they start ramming yachts. They might say it then. So 10 cadets, I guess, walk to the front, including Xaden, and then Commandant Panchek, a guy, starts a speech, and he says that 301 of them survived, but 67 didn't. And Violet does the math, and I also did the math because I have a math degree, and I was just curious. And she's like, it's much closer to 20%, which is higher than the 15% that it normally is. And like, by my math, it was 18%. And I'm like, it's not that much higher.
Easily the rain could have done that. Also, an asshole standing in the middle and throwing someone off, that's like one extra person. Yeah, so like that's...
It's skewing the data.
Yeah. Anyway, Rhiannon and Tara and Violet kind of whisper about Panchek, this commandant, wanting to move up. And we hear about General Milgreen, which is the second time. His dragon is the one that relicked all of the separatists' kids. But he commands all the armies, and apparently his signet gives him the power to see the outcome of a battle before it starts, which is...
very handy.
Yeah, like, I don't understand how you can lose anything. It's just... I just don't get it. But, anyway, Panchek basically says, like, a quarter of them will make it to graduation, and they need to survive school, their peers, the thrashing, and be chosen by a dragon. And he says wing leaders have the last word on any argument, and if an argument ever gets to him, then they don't want it to get there, basically. I guess he killed him? I don't know. But then he just ends his speech and says, don't die. Like, cool, good speech. So the section and squad leaders then take up a position on the ground, basically. So there are... This part I find a bit confusing, but fine. There are 3 squads per section, and there are 3 sections per wing, and there are 4 wings.
God.
So I find it hard to keep it straight in my head.
So that means 3, 6. So that means there's 9 squads in a wing, and there's 4 wings.
Yes.
That's a lot. So that's, what, 27? No, 36. That's 36 squads.
Yeah. 36 squads. And the squads have people from every year, I guess.
Yes.
So anyway, they start actually calling the cadets to their squads. And obviously, Violet and Rhiannon are in 2nd squad, flame section, 2nd wing with Dane, who is their squad leader. And
so, like, when we think about it, though, there are 36 squad leaders. Not as prestigious now that we're breaking it all down. They needed 36 of them.
True. Yeah. But not every second year is going to be one if there's 36. Also, I don't know if third years can be
I'm sure they can.
Squad leaders. Yeah. So, like, I guess it's not awful. But yeah. Violet is just happy that Xaden isn't the wing leader of her squad. So he's not the wing leader of 2nd squad, which is good. it was also interesting because I was like, oh, she's in second squad. That's interesting. Why is the... No, not second squad. Second wing. I was like, why is the book called Fourth Wing? So Violet actually looks over at Xaden then, and he's watching her, and he goes to talk to the wing leader of second wing, and all of the wing leaders actually get together, and they have a heated discussion, and then it's announced that Violet and Rhiannon's squad is moving to the Fourth Wing. Name of the book. And then they all, like, shuffle around so that they can do that. But then Xaden speaks to everyone to, like, kind of give the, like, welcome speech of a student, I guess. And he tells them their squad are the only people that won't kill them. And he kind of, like, tells them that they all likely feel like badasses now. And, like, some of the cadets cheer. And then he's like, you should all feel amazing, blah, 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 blah. And then dragons fly in and perch on the walls, and a few cadets scream, because I guess, like, most have never seen dragons before. But there are 3 red dragons, 2 green, 1 orange, and an enormous navy one that huffs on Violet and the people around her. And, like, she feels the warmth of the dragon's breath. In Violet's head, we kind of get that, like, if dragons didn't need humans to, like, develop signets and have powers and weave the wards, then Violet thinks that they would just kill them all.
Yeah.
So, dragons don't have a high...
Tolerance?
Yeah, tolerance. That's a good word. I just drew a blank. But a cadet, like, runs out of their lines, rankings, and the red dragon burns him to a crisp immediately.
It's
like,
not
just
funny,
ashes.
but it kind of is.
And Violet sees that happen, but then she just looks ahead and she hears it happen 2 more times. And the navy dragon stares at Violet, and she thinks it can see her weakness and fear, but she lifts her chin and she just says, like, she will not die today. Xaden then asks if they feel special now, and Violet knows, like, they want them all scared. Like, a cadet in front of her literally pisses his pants at this point of the book. You're like, there has to be more to this. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so the next morning, they're all listening to the names on the death roll. And, like, obviously there's a lot of them. I think there was the count of 70 last night. But Violet is thinking, like, they got uniforms and beds last night, and, like, clearly people are sharing rooms, and, like, you do that until you make it through the threshing and actually get a dragon. After the death roll, the squad leaders address them, and Dane, like, acts like he doesn't know her at all, and Rhiannon is like, he's really good at acting like he doesn't know you. You're like, is that a good thing? It is, but he tells them he expects that, like, one of them should have memorized their schedule, and he'll see them all in the sparring ring this afternoon. And Violet thinks, like, they only have gym twice a week, so she just needs to get through today without injuring herself, and then, like, she has a little while to go before the next time she's in. We also get a bit about the future. So in the future, they're going to have to complete a gauntlet, which is a vertical obstacle course, and then 2 days later is the threshing. I think the threshing is in October.
It's October
now. Wow, it is a Halloween book. I didn't even know. I hope it actually is in October. If it's not in October, let me live this lie. Anyway, as Sawyer is a repeat first year, so he's one of the 34 that just didn't get a dragon last year and is trying again, and Dane asks him to, like, get the first years around, and he basically yells out to them to tell them where to go for their next class, and they talk about, like, not they, but Violet and Rhiannon talk about how, like, shitty it must be to be repeating your first year.
Yeah.
Which would be awful. 100%. So bad. Yeah. But then Violet hears Dane do, like, a bird call to her. and knows that, like, that is their sign to meet. And Rhiannon says that she'll grab Violet's stuff for her class if Violet wants to go meet with him. So she does. And they hide behind, like, a dragon-carved pillar. And he asks how her knee is. And he asks if anyone screwed with her last night. And then he asks if she ate this morning. And he's being very mother hen to her. And she's just, like, kind of done with it. She's like, it is what it is. Like, you can't control every single second. Like, she's just done. But she's like, one thing she needs to know is she needs him to tell her why their squad was moved. And he basically tells her that Xaden wants her dead. And, like, as her wing leader, he can punish her any way he sees fit. So it's, like, an easy line to...
Is that what it is?
Being her wing leader. Like, you can kill someone easily anyway. Like, I don't think you need to be her wing leader for that. But, like, it'd almost be better if he wasn't, because he can just kill her and then pretend it wasn't him. Like, but yeah. Dane cups her face then.
Yes. Touching her face.
And I'm like, what do you think he'd even see right now? Because nothing really happened.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, doesn't matter. And he says he'll keep her safe and tells her to keep a low profile, especially in Battle Brief, because that is a class that, like, everybody in the Riders Quadrant has Battle Brief at the same time. But she is, like, so done with him right now. She's like, Xaden isn't going to kill her during class. Like, he's just being overbearing. But he tells her, like, he might kill her during class. He's ruthless, like his dragon. And his dragon is obviously the navy blue dagger tail, which is super rare.
I've been calling her Scale. Scale. Not Scale with a C. Sure. Scale with a G. Scale. Not
Scale.
You say it however you want.
I see the words on the page and I go, and then I go to the next word. I actually haven't tried to say it out loud.
Yeah, in my head I call her Scale. Like Scale, but Scale. Sounds the same.
Sounds the exact same. But I get it.
It's fine.
We get a tiny bit about Dane's dragon now. He has a red dragon called Kath, who is a male dragon, which I don't love.
It's you.
Because my name is Catherine.
I did one of those quizzes to figure out what dragon I would have. I would get a green dragon.
Yeah? Oh, green dragons are cute, though. That's what her sister has. So he then tells her what his signet actually is, which is interesting. I forgot that he told her this early. But he can read recent memories. He just has to put his hands on somebody's temple, I think.
Yeah.
At least that's what he says. Maybe he's lying about that shit, too. But he says, like, because he actually has to physically touch somebody, he's not a security risk. But his signet is being kept quiet, so he can be used in intelligence.
Yes. So the military is, like, training him to be a spy, essentially. That's not going to come up again.
And, like, never. She, like, notices the badgy things that he has on his coat, and, like, everybody has badgy things, but his signet badge is, like, a secret thing. And then she thinks, and she's like, Xaden doesn't have any badges. So you don't know anything that he's doing. And you're like, interesting. Dane then tells her that this place, like the Riders Quadrant, really cuts all the bullshit of a person away. But he is still the Dane that she knew, and they are still best friends.
That's nice, I guess.
So nice. He's definitely not lying.
They're best friends, yet he's looking at her with heat and refuses to look at her in panties.
Yeah, fair. Maybe she didn't wear underwear. We don't know. I wouldn't if I were wearing
skin tight leather,
tight pants like that. Yeah. Anyway. So Violet ends up, like, leaving this little nook first to get ready to go to class, because she's going to be late now. But she feels the hair on the back of her neck raise, like, once she's out in the open, and she looks back, and she sees Xaden watching her with narrowed eyes. And they both just stare at each other for, like, an awkward amount of time. Like, people have to, like, go around her, because she's just standing there staring at him. And, like, somebody's trying to talk to him, and he's just ignoring them, and they're staring at each other. And you're like, I love it, too, so much. Like, I'm so here for it, but I'm also like, wouldn't someone notice? I guess everyone just thinks that they want to kill each other. Then Dane obviously shows up and asks what she's doing, and she tells him, like, look over there. And he looks up and sees Xaden, and then he curses. And then Xaden yells out from 20 feet away that he knew their parents were tight, but do they have to be so obvious? And he says he bets that they were childhood friends first, and then probably first loves to each other, which they weren't, but, like, I get what he's saying. And then he starts walking towards them, and Violet recites the codex to Dane and says that, like, Xaden can't hurt him as a squad leader because, like, they need to have, like, a conversation with, like, but Dane says he can hurt you, and then just tells her to run, and then she just runs, which is just so silly. I'm like, silly.
There was no, like, immediate threat.
Yeah, I get why, but I'm still like, that's a bit silly.
Yeah. So the next chapter, I actually found the quote really interesting, so I did take note of it. So it is actually a letter from General Lilith Sorrengail, aka Violet's mother. It's a brief to the king that states that she disagrees with General Melgren's order for the children of the rebellion leaders to watch their parents be executed. So she, like, didn't want the kids to watch their parents be murdered. But I think...
Yeah. And, like,
they still were.
Yeah, I think that is what happens. But, like, it is interesting that she's saying that after losing what we know is a son that she actually loved. So it's, maybe we don't know everything about her. Maybe she's not all bad.
Maybe not.
Maybe she is.
So we skip, it's now battle brief class. And like you said, it's the only class that every cadet does together. So first, second, and third years are all jammed into this. Like, think of how big, like, that's like 500 at least. Because 300 made it across the parapet. Plus all the first and second years. Like, that's a lot. So, like, we're talking, like, at least 500. So the professor for this class is Professor Devara. And the point of the class is to essentially make sure that all the students are well versed in strategy and policy in case they get called up early. Although, like, Professor Devara sort of, like, reassures everyone that usually they only call up third years. Because they're the ones that, like, have actual field experience.
Yeah, and obviously you won't get called up before second year, because you wouldn't.
Well, they get a dragon, anyway, like, in a couple of months. So they'll have a dragon for, like, majority of their first year, right?
I don't remember. It's like, is it?
I would call it like late summer, early fall. Anyway, so they also in the class are going to be discussing raids and battles, like, as they happen, like real ones. So that's why they have the class every single day, and the class is co-taught by Professor Markham. And he is actually the head of the squad. I did it. Oh my god.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I can't believe you just did it.
So he's the head of the scribe quadrant. I did do it in the
wild.
Yeah. So the head of the scribe quadrant is Professor Markham, and he's going to be co-teaching the class. So he sees Violet there, and she says he looks disappointed. Because he obviously thought she would be his star pupil in the scribe quadrant, and she's not. So the first lesson today is that the eastern wing was attacked last night near a village called Shakir by a drift of griffins and their riders. So that's what a big group of, so like you said, the other kingdom that have griffin riders, they're called a drift, a group of them. The same way a group of crows is called a murder. I was trying to get other teachers at school to prescribe that same word to a group of students because I thought it was accurate. Of students, but I was denied. Yeah. Anyway, thanks.
I'll do it for you.
So the professor tells them that the wards faltered on top of the Espen Mountains, which let the griffins in and allowed them to use magic. So, we learn now that dragons bond with humans to power their wards. And essentially it creates like a gigantic, for lack of a better word, I'm calling it a gigantic dome that extends all around as much of the kingdom as humanly possible. And it makes it impossible for any other creature to use magic inside the wards. So the only magic that can be used inside their kingdom is dragon magic. So they're saying that, there was an attack and the wards failed, so the griffins got in and were able to use magic inside their kingdom. So the issue is that the wards are circular. So like I said, it's like a big dome. And they only extend so far from the Vale. And the Vale is the dragon's home. So obviously there are certain parts of the kingdom that are not covered. And without the wards, Violet knows that they'll never be safe. Because the riders from Poromiel would raid them like all the time for resources because apparently they're greedy and they're not happy with the trade agreement that's in place. So apparently the war is all their fault. Yeah.
Yeah, of course it is. That's how you write history books.
So apparently 37 civilians were killed in the hour of the attack before the dragon riders managed to show up to like repel the drift. And like obviously I can't imagine griffins withstanding dragons very much.
No, I don't really understand it because I'm like, griffins are cool.
But I just feel like a dragon.
But they could just go fire,
and then all the griffins would be dead. Anyway,
I guess maybe they have magic too.
That's true. So Professor Devara wants the students to ask them questions about the attack and like wants them to think critically. She's, like, looking for people to be like, well, go ahead, like, ask me for information. So Violet looks at the map, and she sees how high the mountain range is where the attack was, and said that griffins don't usually tolerate height well. So, like, it's an odd place for them to choose to pick a fight, where they're, like, at a disadvantage. Yeah. So, like, some other students ask, like, less relevant questions, like, have the wards faltered before? Did any rioters die? Some guy named Pryor, who's in Violet's squad, is, like, really indecisive and, like, can't ask the question. And then he gets picked on by Luca, who is a catty girl, also in their squad. And Violet, like, doesn't want to draw attention to herself, obviously. I'm pretty sure Mira, like, the sister told her not to.
Well, also, Dane just told her not to, especially in Battle Squad, because everybody's there. Right.
So she tells Rhiannon to ask about the altitude of the village, which she does. Like, Rhiannon does ask the question, but Professor Devara obviously knows that Violet made the observation and asks her to, like, oh, can you continue with that line of questioning? Like, she's obviously on the right track. So Violet deduces that the Griffins wouldn't have risked attacking as, like, they're a weaker squad unless they knew the wards were going to be down in that spot. And continues to figure out that the Dragon Riders must have already been on their way, since the village is about an hour from the outpost, but it only took them an hour to get there. So the town would have had to, like, light the beacons, and the squad would have had to, like, get ready and everything like that. So it would have taken them longer than an hour to get there. So she deduces, well, they had to have already been on their way. And Jack Barlow, our friend from the parapet, sort of mocks her and tells her, like, she's an idiot and starts bullying her to his friends and be like, you're dumb. Like, obviously, it was an hour away. They got there in an hour. Like, you're dumb. But the professor is like, yeah, no, you're correct. Like, a dragon felt that the ward was weakening in that space. And so they got the squadron to go fly and investigate. So then Devara asks the second and third years for their input. And after, like, a few other people say stuff, Xaden asks what the condition of the village is. Apparently, the Griffin Riders were looting and burning buildings as they went. And since the village isn't a rich place, it obviously means they were looking for something specific, but no one knows what it was. So, that doesn't seem like relevant information, but it gets relevant later.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Definite relevance.
So they go have lunch, and then they are sparring. So apparently it's what is called assessment day. And Violet has really only had 6 months of training, so she's super nervous. So this is like the fighting bit. So Rhiannon has been sparring and combat training for ages, but apparently she sucks at history. So Rhiannon and Sawyer offer to train Violet in combat if she gives them history lessons, which is a brilliant, like, a good deal.
Yeah, because she's smart. She doesn't need help with history. She's been doing that her whole life.
So,
not that there's smartness in many different ways, but she's like conventionally book smart.
So, Jack Barlow, so, like, they're in the process of doing their sparring, like, training. And Jack Barlow snaps another cadet's neck during a fight and just kills him. Killing people willy-nilly.
Who cares?
However,
willy-nilly.
The instructor is pissed. So the yeah.
Snaps
so the the professor's name is Emitario. And I guess he's pissed because, like, he says it's assessment day. You're not supposed to kill people on assessment day. Like, I guess... Well, I guess that's fine. The thing. Like, but any other day, like, if you're fighting and if you're sparring and you want to kill them in the process of a fight, like, that's your prerogative. But it's assessment day. You're not supposed to. So he makes Rhiannon and another guy, Tynan, fight. Tynan comes back a bit. So she gets him immediately. Like, she tackles him and pins him and tells him to yield. But he refuses. And she's got him in this hold. And she's, like, choking him. And the professor, like, has to step in and say, like, she's won. Like, just yield. Yeah.
Give up already. Yeah.
So, apparently he has more ego than he does skill. And is, like, a general asshole. Which is why he comes up again.
Of course.
So it's Violet's turn then, and she has to fight this girl with pink hair. And the girl is a year 2. And she does have one of those, like, rebel dragon relic marks. And she...
Which, like, sounds super cool.
Does sound super cool.
I know it's, like, a bad sign, but it sounds super cool.
I kind of want one.
Same. I'm not getting a tattoo for this book until the series is done.
It's a terrible idea.
But that's like...
That would be so cool.
So far away. And I want one so bad.
Yeah. So obviously they're, like, on a mat. And they're about to go at it. And the girl is, like, teasing Violet. And she calls Violet a bitch. And says that her mother murdered her family.
Good.
So she's mad.
Ideal. Yes.
So the girl's name is Imogen. So
she won't come back ever.
So Violet is, like, obviously trying to dodge because she is fast. But Imogen uses her power to overpower her, even though it's supposed to be no power day. So because it's assessment day where they're assessing your skills, like, she's not supposed to be using her signet. But she does several times. And she gets on top of Violet and tries to stab her, even though, again, you're not supposed to have any weapons. But she does. But her dragon scale armor saves her. So the stab obviously doesn't work, so she grabs her and puts her in a hold and tells her to yield, but Violet refuses. Like, she knows that she can't yield on the first day, even though she should, because she can't get out of it. So Imogen just solves the issue and breaks her arm.
Great. Better than stabbing her in the heart, I guess.
It's just funny that she went from, I'm gonna kill you, to, I'll just break your arm, that's good enough.
Yeah. What else are you supposed to do, I suppose?
Mm-hmm. So Violet, like, passes out from the pain of having her arm broken. So Dane takes her to the healers, but, like, so Violet sort of, like, wakes up as they're getting to the healers quadrant, and she says, like, everybody just saw you freak out at Imogen and take me away. So, like, this whole you pretending you don't know me thing, like, is sort of in the shitter at this point. So they get to the healers and they meet up with Winifred, who is, I guess, like, sort of a nurse, and she's been healing Violet for ages, and tells someone to go get Nolan. So Nolan is a mender. So that's his signet. And he's been healing her for years. But Dane sort of tells her, like, I guess when Winifred tells the nurse, like, go get Nolan, Dane says, don't you dare. Like, don't go get Nolan. And that pisses Winifred off. And she's, like, threatening the nurse with Nolan's dragon eating her if she doesn't go and get Nolan. So the nurse is like, yeah, well, I don't want to get eaten, so she goes. And then Winifred freaks out at Dane, like, saying, like, you would rather her be in pain? Like, I'm going to get Nolan to, like, mend her and free her from her pain. And he says he doesn't, but if she is mended, then she goes back to the riders. If they leave her injury and say they can't mend it, only heal it, then she can maybe go join the scribe quadrant.
Maybe. Like, these aren't great.
Yeah. So essentially, a mender is like, uses magic to heal you quickly, whereas a healer is like what we would think of as sort of a homeopathic doctor.
Yeah.
Right? So his whole, like, plan to not heal her so that she can join the scribes really pisses her off.
Of course it does. They had this conversation and she thought it was over. Yeah. He's being shitty. Yes.
So Nolan comes in and she says, like, yes, mend me, but just this once, because she doesn't want to rely on it and she doesn't want everyone to think that she's weak.
Which is kind of fair. I get where she's coming from, but I'm also like,
I don't understand how being healed, like, if you have the resources to be healed constantly from being, like, hurt, why wouldn't you take that?
Yeah. I guess it shows that she has a relationship with somebody. I don't know why why that's a bad thing.
Well, because, like, just think about it. So, like, if she's constantly getting healed for her injuries, everyone will just be like, well, there's no point in healing her because she'll just go and get it fixed.
Yeah. Unless you're trying to kill her, I suppose.
I guess. So Nolan and Winifred are really pissed that she's been injured. And they mention that the children of the rebels are specifically conscripted to the Riders quadrant because there's a higher chance of death.
Which is wild.
Yeah. So Dane obviously keeps arguing with her to switch quadrants, but she is like, no. She's super stubborn. So after Violet is mended, she gets back to her barracks, and Rhiannon is just happy that she's okay. and promises to help her with mat challenges that start in 2 weeks. So mat challenges are just going to be like 2 people squaring off in a ring fighting. So Violet goes to lay on her pillow, and under her pillow is a note from her sister Mira and a journal. So the note says that she's proud that Violet is her sister, and the journal is actually Brennan's that he gave Mira in her first year. And apparently it's everything he learned when he went through. So, like, this is highly unethical because they are not supposed to have any contact with family members outside of their, I don't know what you call it, their barracks. Like, the first year, they're not allowed to have any contact at all.
Outside of their quadrant, I guess.
Their squad, yeah. Anyway, so she looks through the book, and she says his first entry mentions that challenge fights are decided in advance, and if she can figure out where they're written down, she'll know who her matches are in advance and can prepare. So, like, very plot-based coincidence here. Like, she opens the book and it just happens to be the exact page that she needs to know information on.
Yeah.
So, the next chapter has, like, in the little quote at the top is a little excerpt from the Codex. So it says there are 2 rules about cadets with rebel signs. No more than 3 of them are allowed to be assigned to a squad, and no more than 3 can assemble together at one time. So, like, these are quite harsh conditions. So, like, 3 rebels, like 3 people with
rebels' children, because they're not even like they like.
That's true. Yes,
it's wild.
It's wild. They're not rebels. It's their kids, but it is what it is. So yeah, 3 of them are not allowed to hang out together, and they're not allowed to have 3 of them in one squad. So Violet, we like skip ahead a little bit. Violet is sneaking around the nearby forest at night looking for what are called funnily berries. So she says she wants the underripe ones for her arsenal and has been sneaking out all week stockpiling things from her book of poisons because the challenges start soon. So she climbs a tree for the berries, takes a few, and she hears 2 people approach. And she's, like, in the tree. So, I don't know if, like, it's illegal to go out after dark. Or if it's frowned upon.
They have a curfew, probably. Like, I'm assuming they have a curfew. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, like, you can kill anyone anywhere. So, I guess you just don't want to be caught outside at dark if people want to kill you.
Well, yes, that's a good point. So she is in the tree when 2 people approach. They have cloaks on, but when they take down their hood, she sees that it's Xaden and it's Imogen, the girl that broke her arm. And then 24 people approach, and Violet sees that they are all rebel-marked people, which is apparently against the law. So Violet sort of knows that, like, maybe it's just an innocent gathering of people. Maybe they're not trying to decide anything scary. But she needs to make sure that they aren't plotting a rebellion. So she, like, hops from tree to tree like a spider monkey to hear their conversation. And so Xaden then says that, like, everyone has to be careful because, like, everyone is just waiting for them to fail. So he assigns Imogen and Garrick to help, like, a few of the first years with combat. And then a first year freaks out and wants to go home, and Xaden essentially tells him that, like, unless he's ready to fight it out, then he will not survive.
And it's, if you, like, think about it all, it's so sad because, like, they don't have, like, they're the same as Violet. They didn't want to go necessarily to the Riders Quadrant. Like, it's sad.
Agreed. So the other sort of thing that he's being a bit harsh, like telling this first year, like that he's got to get with the program and essentially to quit crying about it. So they're all sort of like, not quite cool. So he essentially tells everyone like he can't hold their hand, which is true.
Yeah. It's tough love. It's just sad.
So, after like a few crickets in the meeting, one of them first years asks about battle brief because apparently they're struggling with the class. And Xaden responds with like, learn what's taught and just recite it. And to keep what they all know hidden. So like,
interesting.
Ba, ba, ba.
What could that mean?
I don't know. Like we learned at like that little quote at the beginning of the chapter from the Codex about how children of rebels are not allowed to gather in groups more than 3. Like, this is obviously a group larger than 3, right? So technically what they're doing is illegal, and technically they would all be killed for this.
Which is insane.
It is super insane, like, yeah. But, like, it's really hard for me to not see them as children. But they're not children. They're 20 years.
They're 20.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, I guess they're still, like, youngish. But, like, I think of them as, like, oh, maybe there's a 12-year-old. Maybe there's a 15-year-old. Or, like, I see, like, all these various ages of, like, children. And Xaden is just, like, putting them all under his wing. But, like, that's not the reality. The reality is they are all 20-year-old adults.
Yeah. Some of them are older. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I was the same way. I was like, one of them is just a little baby boy who just wants to go home.
Yeah.
Not that you can't be afraid of a death camp at 20. 20, because you can. But it's just, that's true. I was 100% like, he's just a little boy.
Yeah, but he's not. He's an adult. So, like, I guess Violet is like, sees this and knows that they're breaking the law, but she also realizes that, like, they're not doing anything illegal. They're not talking about, because I guess the issue is that they fear that if they gather in groups of more than 3, they'll start talking about rebelling again. Start getting momentum.
That's how rebellion.
That's how it works. So they don't want that happening. But she's like, well, they're not talking about rebelling. They're literally giving advice on how to survive, right? So she's like, this isn't really illegal. So she's still listening in on the conversation, and another student asks Xaden when they get to kill Violet Sorrengail. So, like, awkward.
So awkward.
And he tells them that he gets to handle Violet.
I want him to handle me.
Yeah, I would have him handle me. So,
oh, how old is he? Is he like 21?
He's 23, I think.
Oh, yeah, because he's been there. He's a third year. Yes. So he's 22 or 23.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad, but I also hate it. They grow up fast when they have to go to a death camp. No, I don't like it.
Oh, God. So, Imogen, the pink-haired girl that, I guess, broke Violet's arm, is pissed because her mother and sisters were killed by Violet's mother. But another guy, Garrick, points out that it wasn't Violet. Like, that's not Violet. That was her mother. So, like, why do you want to punish her? And that punishing the children for the sins of the parents is the Navarian way, not the Tirish way. Which is sort of like, ooh, throwing shade. While also...
Which I kind of love, though.
Yeah. So Xaden reasserts that Violet is his to handle. So no one else is allowed to touch her. Yeah, so
Big fan.
They all disperse then, and Violet waits like ages before climbing down the tree. Only to, like, she's obviously waiting for everybody to be long gone because she doesn't want them to know that she's there. And when she gets down, she sees Xaden waiting for her. And she figures out that his signet is shadow wielding. So he knew she was there the whole time.
He didn't know it was her.
No.
Though. He just knew someone was there.
Knew, yes. So he tells her that he might actually have to kill her. So she gets her daggers out and she throws 2 at him. And initially he's like, you missed, because they don't hit him. But then she says, well, back up and see. So he backs up against the tree that was right behind him, and each dagger is in the tree, brushing up right against his ears. So, like, she got some good aim.
But, like, she's not here trying to kill him. He's the hottest person she's ever seen.
Yes. So this surprises him that she actually has some talent. And he tells her that she seems frail and breakable, but is really a violent little thing. And then he grabs the daggers and just gives them back to her. And, like, she thinks he is so beautiful, and she's, like, really annoyed about it. And, like, it's like she sort of is, like, she respects him, and, like, she finds him admirable because he's helping the rest of the rebel-marked people. Like, that was literally the entire meeting, was trying to give advice and help them. So, like, it's like she finds him really attractive and also is starting to like his personality, and that really annoys her. Because she's like, he's trying to kill me, and I want him.
And I am falling in love.
So Xaden then tells her that she should try that dagger trick on Jack Barlow because maybe it will dissuade him from wanting to kill her. And she's like, she finds that really surprising because we'll find out in a little bit, but, like, she's used to people telling her to, like, back off, right? Like,
tone it down.
Like Dane told her earlier to run. Like,
yeah,
he wants her to flee, not fight. So she sort of finds it surprising, and then she asks, why do you want me to, like, persuade him, like, dissuade him from killing me? Is it so you can then kill me yourself? And he asks, like, that depends. Are you going to report us to, like, I don't know, the police? I don't know.
I guess her mother. Like, she could easily talk easily.
She's not allowed to talk to her mother.
We know that, but I'm sure that if Xaden's parents were around, they wouldn't be so shitty, so he can't comprehend that.
I guess. So she says, no, I'm not, because all he was doing was trying to help the younger students, and that nobody should die for that. So he sort of walks away and just tells her that he owes her a favor. And to get back to bed before her wing leader finds out, which I just find funny.
I love it. It's my favorite thing that he says.
But then it's even funnier because she doesn't really get it at first, and she's like, but wait, but you're my wing leader.
So dumb. I love it.
Yeah, it was really funny. So a few days later, she's getting ready to go to morning duty. So Dane waits outside of her room and walks her there. They run into Rhiannon on the way. Apparently she spent the night in a second year named Tara's room. So Dane tells her to, like, hurry back to the dorms because apparently they're not supposed to be doing that yet.
Before the threshing, you're not allowed in a dorm room. Why? Who knows? So it sort of reveals about his personality. He does not like breaking the rules. He is a rule follower. Yes.
And this leads Dane to ask Violet about her sex life and if she is currently having sex. And she tells him it's none of his business. Which I love so much.
But she also, like, she also thinks she kind of wants to make it his business. It's not as cut and dry as like good.
Yes.
We hate him.
But like I love that one, she tells him it's not really his business. And two, he's just like, yeah, okay. He doesn't push her for the information.
No. Yeah, does he touch her face?
Actually I didn't note it down. Maybe. Anyway, so like I love it that it's sort of like seeming to set them up as love interests, but yet like she's still like, listen, maybe there's something between us, but that still doesn't mean you get to know everything about me. Mm-hmm. And I also love that she does think that she's not a virgin, like she's had sex before. Mm-hmm. And I love that. Like I love that we have like, because so many of our heroines are like virgins or near to virgins, or like, you know, they're sweet and innocent, and I just love that she is sweet but not like, you know what I mean?
Is she sweet?
I think she has the capacity for sweetness.
Yes. No, I'm mostly just joking because she was so violent and such. But yeah, no, I agree. That's why earlier when I heard in my head you say that you had said like they haven't had sex before, but I thought you said she hadn't, and I was like, shit, I think I would remember if she was a virgin in this book, because I hate that trope.
But that's what I love about it, is that she's not a virgin. Yeah. She's like, and like again, they're adults. They're 20 and up, so like it would make sense for her to not be a virgin.
Yeah, it is hard reading books when you go from like all the YA books, they're 16. Yeah. Everyone is 16. Yeah. That is the only age you can be. And then you go to new adult and it's the same story, but they're older and it actually makes sense. But my brain is like, 16?
Yeah.
Except for, obviously, it wasn't really because I'm in love with Xaden, but you know.
Yeah. Anyway, so they're walking to her like morning duty, and he tells her that he's worried about her because the challenges start to get today. So the challenges are like I guess the fights that they do in the gym. So they do sparring matches. And he doesn't want her to get hurt, obviously. So her response to him is, don't watch. And I love that. I love it. Because she's right. Like, she is inevitably going to get hurt. This is a camp where like 90% of the cadets die in this school, in this sector or whatever. So like, it's inevitable she's going to get hurt, and he can't stop it. He's not in charge. Yeah. So like, what is she supposed to do? Yeah. So,
and like, even if he could stop it, that would just be worse. Yeah. Like, she has to do this, or she's not able to be in this school.
Yeah. So she tells him that he can't protect her from this. Can't protect her from the challenges. Can't protect her from the threshing. Can't protect her from the gauntlet. And cannot protect her from Jack Barlow. So Dane tells her to like lay low when it comes to him, which is the exact opposite of what Xaden said to her, like just now, that night. He told her to throw daggers at him. And now Dane is saying, lay low, like don't antagonize him, like try and just like keep a distance.
Fly under the radar.
Yeah. So I really find that interesting because we're setting up this like very obvious opposites thing, right?
Yes. And like the thing that I think annoys me the most about Dane is he doesn't, trust isn't the right word, but like he doesn't see that she is strong on her own. Like he can't see that she is a powerful person. Mm-hmm. And like Xaden doesn't know her at all, and he's like, damn.
Yeah.
And like I just appreciate that Xaden,
and maybe it's to his benefit that he doesn't know her. Like he doesn't know her weakness. Like he doesn't know about her bone/joint/ligament issue. So like where Dane knows about it, maybe he does sort of want to treat her more with kid gloves as opposed to Xaden, who doesn't know about it. So he just sees her as another capable cadet that like has so far, she crossed the parapet. she didn't run at the sight of the dragons. And it's been a couple of weeks in dragon school so far, and she's still alive.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it also helps, like, the conversation that they had earlier about her, the separatist kids, like, they were like, it's her mom's fault we're all in here. And he's like, she's in here too.
Yeah.
Like, I think that part is so important because you're like, oh, he realizes that she doesn't want to be here. But he's not, like, shoving her into the scribe quadrant. He's like, I know, I said it right. He's actually supporting her distantly-ish. Like, obviously we can't say he's, like, supporting her, but he kind of is, even though they're enemies.
Yeah, well, he's already made sure that she is in his wing. Like, he's made that evident. And he's already told all of the, like, rebel-marked kids to keep their hands off of her.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's already protection in and of itself, regardless of what he wants to do with it. Like, you know, even knowing that he technically wants to kill her.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so they, Dane also mentions maybe it isn't too late to sneak her into the scribe quadrant. And it's just like, dude, give it a rest. It's been a couple of weeks. Like, just, you know, you just gotta take it that she's here.
Yeah.
This is where she is.
Yeah, it's getting old.
Yeah. So they arrive at morning duty. So she is on breakfast duty. She's chosen to serve breakfast to the other cadets. And she secretly sprinkles the dried fonnelly berry powder that she got the other night in the forest over a cadet named Orrin Seifert's eggs.
And it kind of sounded like his name was Orrin Seifert's eggs.
No, so his name is Orrin Seifert, and she sprinkles this, like, berry powder over his eggs. And I don't understand how he didn't notice, but whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be, like, a bright colored powder, because it's a berry. But
yeah, and it's supposed to, like, turn, I guess it's supposed to turn purple, but, like, wouldn't it have some color at all? Even if it's white, like, eggs are, like...
yellow.
Yeah.
Anyway, well,
just, we'll take it's that. Salt. It's a seasoning.
Yes. So later on, so, like, that's all we hear about that. Later on, they're in dragon identification class, going over all the different breeds of dragons and how to approach them. So they also, like, know which dragons have chosen to be a part of the threshing this year to try and find a rider. So, like, it's completely the dragon's choice. They're autonomous beings. Mm-hmm. So they choose whether or not to join in the threshing and gain a rider. And so they, I guess, tell the powers in charge at the school, and they're like, these are all the ones that have accepted.
Yeah. And it seems like even if they do accept to go to the threshing, they can leave and be like, none of these people are worthy. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So I also, like, I sort of really like that it's not like, it doesn't seem like it's like a magic-y thing. Like, I know there's magic involved, mm-hmm. but it doesn't seem like it really does just seem like the dragons are like, hey, you seem cool, want to be my rider? Yeah. Like, it's not like a magic-y bond. It's not like a mate bond or, like, anything like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's literally just, I like you.
You seem like a good dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I enjoy it too. Big fan.
Yeah. So this year there are around 100 dragons available for threshing, which is problematic because you said at the beginning, 300 people made it across the parapet?
Yeah. And then there was 34
cadets from last year who didn't get a dragon, and then there's only 100 dragons available for 330 people.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of people that die in that time, but inevitably, we're going to have people not get a dragon.
Yeah.
So, the issue with this is that there's 100 dragons, 37 fewer than last year, which was 26 fewer than the year before. So, like, dragons are choosing not to thresh.
Yeah. This is like becoming more and more of an issue.
Yeah.
Which we never really get into, but I think this is one of those, like, breadcrumb things that's like, this is going to come up again, obviously.
Yeah. So they're looking at images of dragons, and they come across that rare blue dagger tail that was mentioned at the beginning of a chapter. So it is Xaden's dragon scale, and apparently she is the most ruthless and the most powerful blue dragon around. Then they look at a black dragon with a morning star tail. So I think the way they class the dragons is by color first and then tail type. Mm-hmm. So, like, there are all kinds of tail types, which can be all kinds of colors. So black dragons are apparently the rarest type. They are the smartest and the pickiest about their riders, and they are the most cunning. So this particular one that we're looking at is revered amongst all the other dragons as, like, an amazing fighter and, like, really brutal, and he's huge. And Jack Barlow says, like, "Oh, I want that dragon." And the professor has to be like, "That black dragon has not agreed to bond this year." Apparently his last rider died using his signet to try and heal Violet's brother.
Interesting.
Yes. So, I guess the professor's name is Professor Kaori. And I guess before Violet leaves the room, she tells Violet that she actually taught both Mira and Brennan, her siblings. Mm. And I guess, like, she can tell that Violet is, like, sort of like, oh, great, like, a lot to live up to. But I love Professor Kaori for this. She says that Violet is smarter than both of them and more compassionate. So, like, don't discount her own skills.
Mm-hmm. I know. She needs this. She needs somebody to tell her this.
Yeah. So later on, it's challenge time. So they're all in the gym. And Dane approaches Violet and tells her that her challenger, Oren Seifert...
What?
I know. Is apparently friends with Jack Barlow and told his buddies that he's going to try and kill her since she is a, quote, liability to the wing. Which I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how they have this in their brain that she's a liability to the wing. Like, she hasn't done anything so far to show she's a liability.
Yeah, I think it's just that she's small and a woman and weak.
I hate it.
Yeah, 100%.
So, Jack Barlow sort of taunts her a little bit. So she's had enough, so she throws her daggers at him. One nicks his ear, and then another one lands an inch below his balls. And Dane is, like, pissed at her. He's like, "What are you doing? Like, you shouldn't be antagonizing him." But, like, she's just sort of frustrated because she's like, laying low didn't work.
Yeah.
Like, I laid low, he's still being an ass.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you want me to do? So she starts her fight with Oren, and she says that he's looking, like, green and sick. So he charges at her a few times, and she dodges, manages to push him to the floor, and put her dagger to his throat right before he throws up all over the mat. So she wins the fight, and the way that they do it is she gets to take his dagger.
I love that. Big fan.
I do too. But, like, is this a dagger? Like, do they all just have their own daggers, or are these, like, school-given daggers?
I agree, because in the beginning, her sister gave her daggers, and she was like, I didn't earn these. I can't bring them in. And her sister was like, fuck it, you're a Swarndale. So, like, I too am confused. That's it.
Yeah.
It's the whole shebang.
Anyway, so then the next week she wins again because she fed her opponent hallucinogenic mushrooms.
Amazing.
The next week she wins because she numbed a guy's feet with Zinna root. The one after that, she wins because she fed them tarsilla leaves to a girl, causing her vision to blur. And another one, she fed the bark of the carmine tree to a dude, making him sluggish and ill. So, like, she keeps poisoning people so that she can win the fights because she's not yet, like, strong enough. Which I think is genius.
It's so smart, but I'm also like, how is nobody noticing?
Yes! You would think that the professor would notice.
But, like, my headcanon is that he notices and he is like, she's using everything in her arsenal. Good job.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So her next challenge is against someone named Rayma, but Rayma was sent to the healers because she couldn't walk in a straight line because Violet gave her the peels of the walwyn fruit. So she thinks like, oh shit, I gave her too much, or like I gave it to her too early. So like it took effect too soon. So Xaden offers to step in instead. And Dane's like, that's not fair. You're a third year. Like, you've got a ton of experience. But Xaden's like, don't worry. Like, I'll make sure she stays in one piece. So, like, Dane is frightened because everyone sort of knows that Xaden wants to kill her. And this is his opportunity to do that without recourse.
Yeah.
So she, like, immediately throws a dagger at him because she's like, shit. But he catches it and just tosses it off the mat.
Catching daggers is one of my, like, it's the dumbest thing ever, but I love it.
It's so hot.
It's so hot. I'm like, you can't do that.
So she attacks him with a different dagger, and he disarms that one. So, like, after all of these fights, she's got a whole arsenal of daggers built up. So he asks if she's going for blood today, Violence. So that's her new nickname for him, or his new nickname for her. Instead of Violet, he calls her Violence because, like, she's a lot more violent than he anticipated her to be.
Because he judged her by looking at her, and then he was like, shit.
Yeah. So they fight, and he keeps disarming her daggers one at a time. And then he's, like, as he disarms her, he offers her advice on her moves.
Which is like, this is perfect.
Yeah. So he gets her on the ground. Woo!
Big fan.
Yeah. And then he whispers in her ear.
Ugh, shivers.
That she's been really smart to take out her opponents before the match. Like, he can tell what she's been doing. But he says, like, it's causing her not to test herself in combat anymore. Like, she's going easy on herself. And, like, it's true. Like, she hasn't really had to fight very hard at all.
Yeah.
So they're, like, fighting and rolling, and she does get the upper hand on him once, but he still ends up on top, and, like, you know, there's rubbing and rolling, so, like, she's getting turned on at this point. And he gives her a little bit more instruction. He tells her to go for smaller moves since she's small instead of big moves. But, like, the moves that he's mentioning are, like, killing blows. And she's trying not to kill anybody.
Yeah, and she's not, like, Jack Barlow. She's not here, like, trying to kill everybody she's fighting against.
So he tells her that Dane is actually holding her back because he's being overprotective. And, like, it's 100% true. And then he gets up and he actually tells Dane to be less protective and more instructive. And, like, valid, yes, because she is there. Like, he can't keep just trying to be like, well, let's get you to the scribe quadrant. Like, that's not gonna fly. He needs to accept that she's there and do what he can to help her instead of being like, oh, you shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
So she's really surprised that Xaden has left her alive. And, like, she thought that this would have been his perfect chance to kill her. And Dane is surprised, too.
And the readers are not surprised at all.
No, of course we're not. So, a few days later, she's hanging out in Dane's room. Again, I thought they weren't supposed to, but it's okay
illegal for everybody else.
Yeah. So they're talking about Xaden, and she asks if his dragon would have bonded him if he was planning on betraying Neveri.
Good question.
And because, like, the dragons can sense your, I guess, your loyalties, and the dragons are, like, the only reason they take riders is so that they can create the wards that protect their land.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, obviously, if you're a traitor and you plan on destroying the land of Navarre, the dragon's not going to want you as a rider, because that means destroying their home.
Yeah.
So Dane says he doesn't think so, because dragons are in your head all the time. Like, you can't lie to your dragon. So, like, there's like a mind link after you've bonded.
Interesting.
Yes. So Violet then says, like, she doesn't think it's Xaden's style to, like, kill her just in plain view of everyone. Like, she doesn't think he's gonna, like, snap her neck on the mat the way Jack Barlow would.
Yeah.
And Dane says, like, he spoke to Professor Markham. And Professor Markham is the head of the scribe quadrant. And he says, like, you know, I've been seeing you get threatened. So, like, Oren Seifert pushed her into a wall. Crushed / mutilated violets were sprinkled onto her bed. So, like, she's been getting threats.
Yeah. And,
right?
like, you're like, of course Oren shoved her into a wall. She fucking poisoned him.
Yeah. And then she took his dagger. Like, what do we expect here?
Yeah.
He was expecting to kill her on the mat. So apparently Dane spoke to Professor Markham to ask if he could still take her into the scribe quadrant. And apparently he is willing to. And he's willing to keep it a secret from her mother.
Because that'll never come out.
And, like, she's pissed.
Of course.
Because it means that Dane doesn't think she can cut it. And he says it every single day when he walks her to formation, even though it makes him late. When he yells at their wing leader for fighting her. Like, he's not supposed to do that. And he doesn't do that for any other cadet except for her.
Yeah.
So she says, like, you obviously think that I'm a liability.
Mm-hmm.
And his response is that she's not a liability to him because he knows her.
But she's a liability to everybody else. Like, that's the undertone of that comment.
Yes, it is. And, like, it's annoying because he's trying to be like, oh, romantically, like, I love you. Like, it just seems like it was, like, on the way to a love confession. Like, you're not to me. I know you. Like, you're not a liability to me. Like, as if, like, oh, I like you. But it's like one of those, like, backhanded compliments.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's trying to be complimentary, but at the same time, he's being a dick.
Do you think in his head, he's like, oh, like, before he even went to the school, do you think he was like, we're gonna end up together?
No.
Like, was it his fantasy that she'd become a scribe and be, like, a little doting wife to him, and, like, they'd still have their fun together, and, like, but he'd be the big bad dragon guy?
Maybe.
It's just weird.
I think that the issue, too, is that, like, they haven't known each other for a whole year, right? Like,
yeah.
They haven't been able to talk or anything, even though they've been living in the same building.
Yeah.
So, like, I think he sort of had this view of her as, like, a scribe, as somebody quiet, as somebody sort of bookish.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's seeing her in a completely different role, and that's jarring for him.
Yeah.
But, like, people can have duality.
What?
People can be bookish and then also be adventurous.
And
or
violent.
Like, or brave, or violent. Or, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Just because she's one doesn't mean she can't also be the other. And I think up until now, she hasn't had the opportunity to explore that side of herself.
Yeah.
So now he's seeing it. And he doesn't like it.
Yeah. I just wonder if he, like, was like, this is what my future is going to be. And now that she's different than he remembers, he's like, but my future.
Yeah. Maybe.
Which is so wrong, obviously. But, you know, people are dumb.
Yeah. So, he tells her, like, he's trying to convince her to go along with his plan. So he tells her that, like, during the threshing, which we've talked about, we've mentioned it, but we haven't described it yet, that every first year is brought to the training grounds and sort of just let loose. They all just loosely, like, go around. And the training grounds are huge. It's not like a dotty little field. It's like a huge expanse. And they just have to try not to get killed by dragons for approaching them, which is why in dragon identification class, they're learning how different dragons like to be approached. Right? Some like you to not make eye contact. Some need you to make eye contact. Some want you to, like, approach from behind. Others don't want you to approach from behind. So, like, you got to remember which type of dragon likes which type of approach. And then when you're on the field, you need to approach a dragon enough so that they see you and can decide whether they choose you or not. But also, if you approach it too much, it could kill you.
Yeah. NBD.
Yeah. But also, it's like free reign for students to kill each other.
Yeah.
And apparently second years and third years, well, nobody is allowed to intervene.
That's important.
Like, yes. Like, that is a hard and fast rule. It's just first years, every man for himself. Like, if somebody wants to kill you, you just have to fight or be killed.
Yeah.
And Dane says that he can't watch her die. Like, he's taking it on faith that she's going to die during the threshing.
And, like, I do get, he's like, Jack has publicly said he wants to kill you. Other people want Xaden's favor, so they probably want to kill you. All the Separatist kids that are there probably want to kill you. Like, I get that people are gunning for her.
Yeah.
But I think it would be more constructive to be like, hey, when you're in the threshing, maybe learn to climb trees or, like, learn to be a quiet walker. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. So he then says, like, if she won't transfer to the scribes for herself, to do it for him.
That is manipulative and shitty.
Yes, it's so manipulative. And he says then that because Professor Markham won't tell her mom, by the time her mom finds out, she'll already be inducted as a scribe. Because her mom has already said, we won't talk for 3 years. Yeah. I can't talk to you. So, like, theoretically, she could sneak into the scribe quadrant right now, do all the scribe training, be inducted as a scribe, and then her mom's, like, shit out of luck. But, like, so inside of herself, she's really proud because she has survived 2 months of this school so far, and 1/4 of her class is already dead.
Yeah.
And, like, she's come really far, so she doesn't want to give up. And, like, he's just begging her, like, just think about it, please.
Just
and
give
that,
up,
like,
please.
And he's like, oh, I don't want to lose you. And I hate that, because, again, it's manipulative. So she tells him that she will think about it.
Ugh.
Yeah. Ugh, that's what I say. I hate it.
Yeah. Same.
So, yeah, that is it for this week. We
hate a manipulative best friend.
Yeah. He's not being a good best friend.
He's not. Was he ever? I don't know that he ever was.
But again, I feel like if she fit into the box that he wanted her to fit in, he probably was. Like, they weren't in active danger, so he didn't feel the need to be protected. And she probably wasn't a rule breaker, so he was okay with that because, like, he's also not a rule breaker. So, like, I feel like the roles they were in before he went to rider school probably did make them a good fit to be friends because, like, she wasn't doing the things that he doesn't like her to do.
Yeah, but it's also, like, they weren't not rule breakers. Like, she says multiple times that they used to sneak out and do shit together. So, like, I don't really it seems like he's changed a lot more than he's willing to admit.
Yeah.
Which,
I see that.
is fine. You can change. Completely cool. But I don't think he notices that he's changed. And he just sees that she is different than she was a year ago. And he doesn't see, like, oh, I'm, like, raw dogging the rules now. Whereas, like, they used to sneak out and skinny dip, and they used to sneak out and climb trees, like...
Yeah.
So, obviously, he has changed, too.
Yeah.
He's allowed, she's not.
Apparently. I just can't wait for her to give him a piece of her mind.
Yeah. Yep. Same.
I don't know when it's going to happen.
It'll happen. Yeah. So, that's it for this week. If you do want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in any of our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, especially if another book like this comes up and people are loving it and we need to hear about it.
Yeah.
You can reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or on Instagram, Facebook at coffeeandcoread or TikTok at coffee.coread.
So, next week we will be reading chapters 10 to 19. So, make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.